Sawadee Krap, hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today I'm going to be sharing with you Chapter 11 from our book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This chapter is titled Meditation, Developing Your Practice. This is where you're going to learn all the ins and outs about the teachings of the Buddha on meditation. There's 4 meditations that the Buddha taught, and I'm going to share each of those meditations with you and help you to understand through the words of the Buddha what he taught on these meditations. So I'd like to welcome you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. And at the same time, I'm going to invite you to join for meditation. Whether you're here at the temple or you're online joining us, you're welcome to join for our meditation. What I'm going to do is start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. Then I'm going to come in with some guidance. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're all meditating together. Then we're going to come out of that with some more chanting. And for here at the temple, if you guys would like to chant along, we have chanting sheets over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself to those. And anybody who's online, you can actually get the chanting sheets by going to buddhadailywisdom.com, click on free books. And if you scroll down towards the bottom, you'll be able to see the daily chants that I do there. So if you'd like to join for meditation, just make yourself comfortable in the seated position, and then I'll be back after the chanting with some guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Wat Tung Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sankho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath. And whenever the mind moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. สัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาโหตังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนัมสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารนังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังปุตโตภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to everyone here at the temple. Welcome to everyone joining us online as well. This is our group learning program where each week I come together with students on Sundays, helping them to understand the chapters in this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. Each Sunday I go chapter by chapter. And then on Wednesdays, I just do meditation with students and open up to any and all questions the students might have. Today's class is all about chapter 11, which is titled Meditation, Developing Your Practice. This is where you're going to learn all the ins and outs of meditation and how to actually train your mind through the meditations that the Buddha taught. So what I'm going to do is share the content from the book, and then I'm going to pause a few times throughout the class where you guys can ask any and all questions that you like. And then if you have any questions, you'll be able to ask those by putting it into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or you'll be able to raise your hand electronically in Zoom, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you might like to ask. So if you've been in this program for any amount of time, you've been learning about all the different things that the Buddha taught about, things like the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires, which helps you to understand the high level understanding of what's going on in the unenlightened mind. This is the craving, anger, and ignorance. And we even talked about the Eightfold Path at different times, which is the solution to help you to slowly eradicate these pollutions out of the mind. And as part of the different teachings that I shared, whether it was the Eightfold Path or whether it was the 3 poisons or any of the other things that we've been talking about throughout this program, we've been talking about meditation to a certain degree, or at least doing meditation together and helping you to understand that meditation is an important component of your practice. You wouldn't be able to meditate your way to enlightenment, but you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without meditation either. So you're going to need meditation. So this particular chapter, chapter 11, is where I give you all the ins and outs of meditation, helping you to understand how to put together your practice and really have a really solid solid, sustainable practice of meditation over a consistent long-term period. So I'm going to help you to be able to understand this topic by first starting with the meditation basics. There's some basic things that you need to understand about meditation as we ease into this topic to be able to help you understand it. The first thing is just helping you with a definition of what meditation is. This is the definition that I share in the book. Meditation is a technique to actively train the mind during dedicated, independent, purposeful training sessions to eliminate unwholesome qualities of the mind and or cultivate wholesome qualities of the mind in the positions of seated, lying, standing, and walking. Now, whether your definition of meditation matches this or not is up to you, but this is how I define meditation, because each one of the meditations that the Buddha taught, there's certain unwholesome qualities that you're eliminating out of the mind, and there's certain wholesome qualities that you're cultivating in the mind. And this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session. And you're doing this either in the seated, lying, standing, or walking positions. And why this is so important for you to understand this definition of meditation is that sometimes nowadays people might think that they're going to go to the gym and meditate, or go for a drive and meditate, or go walk the dog and meditate, or maybe go do some gardening and meditate. Well, if you thought that those things were actual meditation, and you hear me recommend 2 or 3 times of meditation per day, and all you were doing was going to walk the dog or go for a drive or something like this, and you thought you were meditating, then you wouldn't actually be able to get to enlightenment this way. So you need to be able to understand that those things aren't meditation, but it doesn't mean you wouldn't necessarily do them, because those might be enjoyable activities like going to the gym or taking a drive in the car, or maybe doing some gardening. These might be really interesting and fun hobbies that you choose to do. But just be sure you understand that this isn't meditation, that you're going to need this dedicated, active, purposeful training session. And I'm going to share with you here in a moment as we go through our class the 4 different types of meditation that the Buddha taught, and you can see the unwholesome qualities you're eliminating and the wholesome qualities that you're cultivating. So this is what meditation is. In terms of developing your meditation practice, you're going to need a teacher. There's only one type of person that could actually get to enlightenment without the help of any teachers or any guides, and that's an actual Buddha. And that's very rare in the world. The last one that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So there hasn't been a Buddha that the world is currently aware of that has existed since his lifetime. So you're going to need teachers, you're going to need guides. And you know, nowadays we're kind of in like a self-service kind of environment, whereas if you were interested in baking brownies, you'd probably go onto YouTube and try to figure out how to bake brownies, because there'd be somebody that would teach you how to do that. Or if you're interested in doing gardening or any number of different things, you could find a YouTube video or a book that would teach you how to do these things. And those things are fine to be able to help you learn and grow and develop in those kinds of disciplines. But in terms of getting to enlightenment, you would not be able to get to enlightenment without the help of a teacher or a guide along the way. And you're going to need a meditation teacher. You can't ask questions to a book. You're going to need somebody that helps you to be able to see the path. So there's been people over the years that didn't understand this, and they were out there trying to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of teachers or guides, and they ran into all kinds of difficulties and problems. And I'm going to share one of those stories with you to be able to help you understand why it's so important to have a teacher. There was an individual several years ago who was a practicing physician. They were a doctor in their home country, and this individual obviously was quite intelligent and quite smart because they were a practicing physician, and they were trying to get to enlightenment on their own. They were reading books and watching YouTube videos, and they were doing this for about 2 years. And they got to a point where they were having obsessive thoughts in their mind. They were sleeping 23 hours a day. They weren't able to go to work any longer. They were having suicidal thoughts. Their relationships were really struggling and starting to fall apart. They're having all kinds of difficulties and struggles. At one point, this individual realized that they needed some kind of help, and they reached out to me to be able to get some help. And I tried to help them online, but the case was really challenging, so I recommended to this person to be able to come to Thailand and actually learn here. And this person came here for a period of time, and then they went back to their home country. And when they went back over a period of time, they slowly got to a point where they were able to work themselves out of those symptoms, and they were able to get back to work and have a really viable life and a wonderful life. And they're back to doing all the things that they would normally be doing. But for about 4 to 6 years, their life was really difficult because they just didn't didn't have the wisdom to understand that you can't get to enlightenment by yourself. You're going to need teachers and guides to help you along the way. Now, I don't suspect that these kinds of things will ever happen with you because you understand that you need teachers and you need guides. But I just use this story as a way to illustrate to you that it is important to have teachers and guides during your growth and development on the path to enlightenment. So whether you consider that person to be me or somebody else, that's up to you to decide, right? But if you would like to reach out to me at any point, you're always welcome to reach out for guidance, and I'm here to help you. I have no expectation of you. I don't want anything from you. Even if I don't hear from you for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and you reached out to me and said, hey, David, I need your help. Sure, I'm right there ready to help you. So you're going to need somebody to ask questions to, because as I shared, you can't ask questions to a book. It's just not possible. So you're going to need guidance from an individual that's alive today to be able to help you, to guide you on this path. So it's helpful and important for you to have a meditation teacher. There's 4 different positions to meditate in. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times in your journey to enlightenment. And I'm going to introduce you to these positions now so you can understand what they are and how you would use them in different situations and different settings. But just like always, you're not interested in believing me about these teachings. So what I share with you of how I use these 4 positions, you don't believe that. You just listen, you understand, and then you try to employ these different positions maybe in similar ways and see if that's actually helpful. And you might even find other situations where these positions are helpful that I didn't necessarily teach, and you can use them because you'll have them at your disposal if you understand what they are. So the seated position is the one that people are usually most familiar with, where you're sitting on the floor, you're sitting in a chair, and this is kind of like the primary position for meditation. A lot of people meditate in this position. If you're on the floor, you might have cushions under your rear, lightly bring your legs together, and then have your upper body erect so that you can have an attentive and alert mind. You know, you've heard me teach this in terms of our guidance as I share meditation with you guys at different times. So you could sit on the floor, but you could also sit in a chair or a bench or a sofa or in a wheelchair. You can really sit however you're comfortable. If you're in a chair, you might put your feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me here in the temple sitting in a chair with my legs crossed. So this is an option too. And then you just put your hands and arms wherever you're comfortable with your upper body erect. This is kind of like the primary go-to position for meditation. But then when you're in this position, you might actually experience pain in the hips and the knees and the back. This is sometimes what happens as you've been using this body in different ways. You might actually notice that there's some pain sometimes. And rather than just breathe through the pain, that pain is there for a reason to let you know that, hey, there's something that's going on here. And if you're noticing that, you can actually switch to the lying position. This is an excellent position if you're noticing pain in the body at any point during the seated position. This is where you lay flat on the back, face up with your arms out to the side. If you've done yoga or anything like that, they call this shavasana, or they may call it resting pose or corpse pose. This is the way that they refer to it if you're familiar with yoga. So you just lay on your back with your arms out to the side, and now all your muscles are completely relaxed in the body. Then there's the standing position. Where this comes in is that in your seated and your lying position, you could very easily start falling asleep. You might notice that you're dozing off. And if you're noticing that, that's where you can switch to a standing position or a walking position. That'll help kind of invigorate the mind. I've also used the standing position when I've been at a bus stop or something like that and I was waiting for a bus and I knew it wasn't going to be there for 10, 15 minutes and there was nowhere to sit down. I might just stand there with my eyes closed doing a bit of meditation. Now, this wasn't one of my standard 2 or 3 meditations that you need to build up to, but it was like a little touch-up. Right? Even if I was at like a government office and I was waiting in line, and maybe this line only moved every 10 or 15 minutes, I might actually use a little bit of meditation there, that I'm standing up and just closing my eyes and really kind of touching up the mind a little bit, not considering it one of my 2 or 3 that are my standard meditations. Then there's the walking position. This comes in really helpful if you're noticing you're sleepy in either the seated or lying position, but it's also helpful if you have an overactive mind and the last thing you're thinking about is sitting down and being still somewhere, because your mind could be hyped up and too much activity going on in your mind, and you can use the walking position instead. If you're interested in learning this, you can look on our YouTube channel and just type in the search walking meditation, and you'll be able to find many times where I've taught it and I've actually video recorded it. If you have difficulties finding that, you can send me a message and I'll be able to send you the link back so you can get access to one of the videos where I was teaching walking meditation, because it's not always easy to teach it in a class like this because it takes a little bit of time to teach it. So this is a meditation where you're doing very intentional walking. It's not just like walking to the store. It's very intentional walking. You're looking down at the ground and you're focused through the eyes, not using the breath in this particular meditation. So these are the 4 different positions in the way that I've used them, and you can test those out and see how they work for you, because you're going to need to slowly develop these because your body's not going to be able to be in one position permanently. In fact, one time I was in a motorbike accident. I was at the hospital hooked up to an IV, and I couldn't even cross my legs because my legs were kind of banged up from the motorbike accident. So that's where lying position came in, right? I didn't even mention that. So that might be something that you kind of figure out on your own as you're working with these different positions, because your body's not going to be able to permanently be in any one particular position. Then in terms of starting and conducting your meditation session, it's helpful to understand that the mind is the boss and the body is the employee. What I mean by this is that in order to get to the boss, you're going to need to go through the employee. You can't just walk into the boss's office. You're going to need to go through the employee. So if the employee is luxurious, right, it's kind of lazy and lackadaisical. It's not going to take you to go see the boss. But if the employee is painful, it's not going to take you to go see the boss, because it's just pain, pain, pain. So if you're interested in meditating, understanding that you need to go through the employee to get to the boss, that means the employee, the body, needs to be comfortable. So you'd like to come to the middle where there's not luxury and you have all these pillows and blankets and you're all puffed up with those things, but you're also not interested in being in pain either. You like to come to the middle where there's comfort, and that's where the employee will take you to go see the boss, and you can actually train the mind. When you look at the words of the Buddha about meditation and how he taught meditation, because we have his guidance and we can see exactly what he taught, he will typically say, set up mindfulness in front of you before you start meditating. What mindfulness is awareness of mind. So setting up mindfulness in front of you before you start meditating is to bring some awareness of the mind. Right? You would like to have some awareness of the mind. You're not just interested in plopping down into meditation, because you're not going to be able to get as much benefit that way. It's going to be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes into your meditation before you can actually start getting benefit. So if you do something like chanting to ease into the meditation, this will actually really help you to get more benefit out of the meditation itself. But if you're not interested in chanting, there's other things you could do too. During the lifetime of the Buddha, you had to chant in order to get to enlightenment, because that was the only way to remember the teachings and commit them to memory. Where today we have books and audiobooks and videos and podcasts and things like that. But during his lifetime, they would use chanting. So if you're not interested in chanting, because we don't need it in order to remember the teachings, we just use it to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation. If you're not going to do chanting, make sure you have something else. Maybe you go to the bathroom and empty the organs, or maybe you do a little bit of yoga stretching or something like this. You would like to be able to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself by setting up mindfulness in front of you. That's the way you'll do it, is bring some awareness of the mind to ease into meditation. In terms of your time, frequency, and schedule of meditation, many of you guys have been studying with me for a long time. Ask yourself, is it possible to meditate at exactly the same time every single day? Well, the answer that you should come back with is no. It's not possible to meditate at exactly the same time. And the way that you know that is because of the universal truth of impermanence. It's just not possible to meditate at exactly the same time every day. And the Buddha didn't meditate at exactly the same time every day. And remember, you're interested in getting back to as close to what the Buddha did, and that's what's going to actually lead to your enlightenment. The way that I know that the Buddha didn't meditate at exactly the same time every day is because a watch wasn't even invented during the lifetime of the Buddha. 2,500 years ago, he couldn't figure out exactly what time it was. They generally knew what time it was, like in terms of morning, middle of the day, or evening, but they didn't have exact, precise time 2,500 years ago. So if you ever see anything, like on YouTube or in a book or something, where somebody says you have to meditate at exactly 3:30 a.m. every single day, and that's the time that you're going to get the most benefit out of meditation, this is untrue, because you know right away that you can't meditate at 3:30 a.m. every single day. And also, I can share with you that there is nothing special going on at 3:30 a.m. that's going to make your meditation any better or any worse, right? So you don't need to meditate at exactly the same time every day. The Buddha meditated 3 times a day: morning, midday, and evening. Those are the 3 times that the Buddha actually meditated. So what you would essentially like to do is have anchor points, where sometime in the morning, sometime in the evening, you're meditating. And if you build up to those 2 meditations, that'll help you to get to enlightenment. If you can get a 3rd one in the middle of the day, that would be ideal. But getting to 2, you'll get to enlightenment through 2 times of meditating per day. If you're just doing once, you're not going to get to enlightenment that way, but maybe that's where you start. And then you need to build up and gradually develop from there. But 2 to 3 is what you're really going for. And you'd like to build up to 30 minutes of meditation, understanding that that can take 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to that. You're not in a race with anybody. You're not in a competition with anybody. It's your own practice. So gradually build up to it. When I first started, I could only meditate 1 minute. That's how congested my mind was, that even just 1 minute of meditation was really intense. So you just start wherever you start. What you're going to notice is frequency is more important than duration. So if it's a matter of 1 meditation for 30 minutes or 2 for 15, go for the 2 for 15. That's going to produce the most results. And if you've got the anchor points for yourself of morning and midday and evening, well, if you're going to do a evening session, be sure you're doing that before you get sleepy, because you're doing this dedicated active meditation, right? This time where you would like your mind to be attentive and alert. So if you normally fall asleep at, say, 10 o'clock at night, you should probably be meditating around 9 or 9:15. But that's not to say that you couldn't meditate at 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, because you surely should. You surely could. But you're just not interested in starting to meditate at 10 p.m. because then your mind's sleepy. You need this dedicated, active, independent, purposeful training session. So you need your mind to be attentive and alert. Sometimes when people meditate, they meditate with an alarm. And if you meditate with an alarm now, I would suggest that you slowly move away from that. Where, when possible, don't meditate with an alarm. Like in the evenings or on the weekends, if you don't need to go anywhere or be anywhere, don't use an alarm, because there's 2 things that'll happen while you're meditating with an alarm. Is you'll either be in meditation thinking, is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? Your mind's going to be longing, yearning to know if it's time to stop meditating. Or you're going to be deep in meditation, getting all kinds of benefit, and you're going to hear the alarm go off. And now you're like, if I could have just not set the alarm, I would have got so much more benefit, right? So if you don't need the alarm, then don't even use it. But if you're on your way to work and you only have maybe 20 minutes to meditate, and if you show up late at work, it's going to cause problems, then go ahead and use an alarm, right? But in the evenings or the weekends where you don't need an alarm, don't use one. The way that you know that you're building up to a 30-minute meditation session is what you can do about once a week is look at your time before meditation. Maybe it's 9 a.m. and now you start meditating. And then after you're done meditating, look at your clock again, and it's maybe 9:15. And there you know that you've been meditating for 15 minutes. And now you just gradually expand that for longer and longer periods of time as you're building up your practice. So in terms of your time, frequency, and schedule, you'd like 2 to 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes. And that's what you would like to gradually build up to. And if you fall a little bit short of that, or you have, a little bit over that, that's okay. That's fine, because your meditation is important. But whether you miss meditation today isn't going to determine whether or not you actually get to enlightenment or not, right? If you're doing 2 meditations per day for a month, that's about 60 meditations in a month. Well, if you do 52, 53, 54, you're still going to get to enlightenment. It's just that if you miss meditation today, what are you going to do next, right? Because the idea of getting exactly 60 meditations every single month, it's not going to happen because of impermanence. It's going to go up and down and up and down. But if you miss meditation today, that's not going to determine whether you get to enlightenment or not. What's going to determine if you get to enlightenment or not is if you miss meditation today, what do you do next? Does that become 1 week, 1 month, 1 year that you miss meditation? Or do you get right back into it and start meditating? So you'd like to be consistently meditating over a long-term period. Can you string together enough meditations over the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 years that you're going to put together enough work on your own mind? That's what's going to lead to your enlightenment. So if you miss meditation here and there, don't worry about it. Don't stress out about it. Just get right back into it at your next convenient time. Okay? As you're meditating, you might notice sleepiness during your meditation. This is a common thing that sometimes people experience, where you're dozing off and falling asleep. If you're in the seated or lying position, you can just switch to a standing or a walking position. But the other thing you can do is just get some rest. You might notice that your mind has a tendency to fall asleep because when you're prior to getting on the path to enlightenment, your mind might actually be sleeping maybe 6, 8, 10 hours a day. Who knows how many hours you sleep, but you might not be getting very good quality sleep. So now when you start meditating, you start training your mind, you might notice that you start getting sleepy during meditation or even outside of meditation. It's kind of like your mind is like a dry sponge and you're finally giving it water. And the sponge is like, oh, thank goodness. Now I can function like a real sponge, right? Well, if your mind hasn't been getting training all these years, and now you actually start training your mind with some meditation, you might notice that the mind gets a bit sleepy and a bit tired, either during meditation or even during your day-to-day life. You kind of have like a 6 to 12 month little hump to get over where you're going to be experiencing that for a period of time. And if you notice that, it's completely normal, and just know that this is part of what your mind's going to be doing. So if you need some rest, just get some rest. You can take a nap, you can wake up afterwards and then start meditating at that point. Or if you'd like to extend your meditation, you can just switch to another position. You don't need to force your mind to meditate. You'd like to just gradually ease up this meditation practice, not forcing it or posing it on yourself or pressuring yourself to do it, but just gradually ease into it where you gradually build it up. You might notice physical sensations during your meditation where you have like itches and scratches over your body. If you're noticing those kinds of things, what I would suggest you do is just ignore it. Just stay focused on the breath, and each time you're noticing an itch, just keep coming back to the breath. But if you're in meditation and you're noticing an overwhelming urge to itch, go ahead and itch if that's what you need to do. What this is the mind is craving permanent comfort of the body. So just go ahead and itch if you would like to itch. But if it took you maybe 5 seconds before you got to the point where you had such a strong urge you had to itch, well, next time, try to extend that. Make it like 8 seconds or 10 seconds. And then the next time, make it even longer, 12, 15 seconds. Eventually, you can get to the point where you go through the entire life cycle of that itch, and you notice that it arises, it changes, and then it fades away, right? That your mind can just stay focused on the breath. You know that that itch is there, but it arises, it changes, and it fades away, and you don't have this urge to scratch it. This will actually train your mind to not have craving, desire, attachment. Then you might notice visual stimulation during your meditation. What I mean by this is you might notice certain colors or certain images or things like this. This is a common thing that sometimes people contact me about. Sometimes people say, David, I saw green in my meditation. Does that mean I'm going to get rich and wealthy? Or they might say, David, I saw purple in my meditation. Does that mean my boyfriend or girlfriend's going to come back to me? No, it doesn't mean any of that stuff. I'll explain to you guys what this is and why you experience it. The eye that you have, this is just bringing in light. And when you're experiencing sight, it's happening inside the brain. So with the eyes closed, you can actually still see. Right? You're still having images that are inside the mind because the brain is what's actually causing the sight to occur. So when your eyes are closed and you're meditating, you're training the mind, which is non-physical. It's non-tangible. You can't touch it or point to it. The mind has a connection to the brain, which the brain is the physical organ that's inside the skull. And when you're training the mind, it has an effect on the brain. The physical structures of the brain actually start changing. We know this because scientists and researchers are studying it nowadays. They're doing MRIs, they're doing CAT scans. They can see that people who meditate, their brains are physically changing in beneficial ways. And during the lifetime of the Buddha, they couldn't study it. But now we can because we have medical technology to be able to study it. So that's what's actually occurring is the physical structures of your brain are actually changing and it's producing green and purple and white and certain images and things like this. As this is going on, you might actually even hear it occurring. I actually heard this when I was meditating at different times. I would hear, I could actually hear it. And I could feel it too, because I used to have a lot of pressure in my skull. I used to get migraine headaches about 3 to 5 times a week, sometimes to the point of vomiting. And I walked around with all this pressure in the skull. And then after meditating and training my mind in this way, I could feel that it was releasing. And now I'm at the point where I don't even really get headaches anymore. I definitely don't get migraines, and I don't vomit from them anymore whatsoever. I don't get any of that stuff. All the pressure is released out of the skull because the structures of the brain have physically changed. So you might notice this, and this is what's producing the visual stimulation. So don't think you're a special person or there's some meaning to it. All it is that it's your brain that's physically changing. And then sometimes people are taught to meditate with external stimulus. What I mean by this is like beads or music or candles or incense or things like this, maybe even a phone app. If you've been doing those things in the past, that's fine. That's what got you to where you are today, right? But now what I would like to encourage you to do is let all those things go. And it's going to take you time to gradually train your mind to do that, right? There's only 3 things that you actually need to meditate. It's the body, the mind, and the breath. And you'll actually have these 3 things with you everywhere you go until the end of this life. The body, the mind, and the breath. And by you stripping away the music, the candles, the incense, and all these other things, the beauty in that is if you're walking somewhere and you're in a wonderful park and it's sunny and the rainbows are glistening over the pond and these kinds of things, and you're like, wow, I'd really like to sit down and meditate here. Well, if your mind is attached to the music or the candle or something like that, it's like, I can't meditate because I don't have my incense with me, or I don't have my phone app. It won't work. There's no internet service out here, right? So if you're just meditating based on the body, the mind, and the breath, you can sit down and actually meditate at that park and have a wonderful experience. Or say you come here to Chiang Mai at some point. Sometimes people go out in the mountains hiking. They might be like 3 days from civilization, where they're out in the middle of the jungle hiking with a tour guide. And if you only can meditate with that special candle, that means you can't meditate when you're out there, or your music or your phone app or something like that. So you'd like to get to the point where you let all these things go and you strip them out of your practice. You just need the body, the mind, and the breath. And the best way to do this kind of thing is do it in small incremental steps. Because remember, your mind craves permanence. So whenever you're trying to get rid of anything unwholesome, you can do this in gradual little incremental steps, whether it's cigarettes or alcohol or things like this. You know, alcohol, maybe you should try to take a more abrupt approach to it, but something like cigarettes, you can usually do this gradually. But what you would like to do, like say you're trying to get rid of the music, right, in your meditation, you can do one session with it, one session without it. One session with it, one session without it, right? And now you do that for like a week or so. And then when your mind's acclimated to that, maybe you do one session with it, 2 or 3 without. One session with it, 2 or 3 without. And then you do that for a week or so. Now your mind's adjusted to that. And then maybe you do one session with it, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, who knows, however many without it, right? And you can do this where you gradually phase it out. So you can do this with unwholesome things that you're trying to eliminate. Just take these little incremental steps so that your mind doesn't even realize what you're doing. Or you can do this with positive things too. Like maybe you're interested in switching to a plant-based food supply. Maybe you do that small incremental steps because you're going to need to find new restaurants, new suppliers, and things like this. Maybe you have one meal with meat, one meal plant-based, one meal with meat, one meal plant-based, or one day with plant-based, one day with meat, or something like this, right? This is a way to slowly bring something wholesome into your life, taking little incremental steps. Because remember, your mind doesn't like impermanence. It doesn't like change, right? It's craving permanence. So if you do these little small incremental steps like this, either bringing something down that is unwholesome or increasing something that is wholesome, your mind will really appreciate this. And it'll be a more sustainable change for you because you've done it slowly and gradually. So I'm going to pause here and see what questions you guys have. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions you like about anything I've shared so far. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to move on to the next piece. This next piece is helping you to be able to see the 4 types of meditation that the Buddha taught. These are his words where he's introducing the 4 types of meditation. And what's really helpful here is to know what the 4 meditations are that he taught. Because nowadays there's hundreds and even thousands of meditations out there that different people are sharing. And if you tried to learn all of those things, it would stretch you really thin. You wouldn't be able to get deep into any number of those particular meditations because you're out there trying to learn so many different ones. And some of these meditations can actually take your mind in the opposite direction of enlightenment. It can mislead you. So if you try to learn all these other different meditations, it can actually hinder you from training your mind in the direction that you really need in order to be able to get to enlightenment. So the Buddha taught these 4 types of meditations, and these are the only 4 that you would ever need. There's 2 primary forms, and then there's 2 specialized types. So prior to this, the Buddha was teaching his ordained practitioners something else that he needed to share with them about how to get to enlightenment. And this is now getting to this point where he says, having based himself in these 5 things, meaning the 5 things he talked about previously, the monk should develop further another 4 things. The perception of unattractiveness of the body should be developed to abandon lust. This is a meditation to eliminate sexual cravings. Loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will. This is a meditation to eliminate anger, hatred, and ill will, and all the lesser versions, even the slightest dislike. Mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation should be developed to cut off thoughts, right? This is what you've been learning and what we've been practicing oftentimes prior to class. This is a primary form of meditation that the Buddha taught in addition to loving kindness meditation. Then he shares this one. He says, the perception of impermanence should be developed to eradicate the conceit, I am. When one perceives impermanence, the perception of non-self is stabilized. One who perceives non-self eradicates the conceit, I am, which is nibbana, enlightenment, in this very life. This is a meditation to help you realize non-self. We've talked about this a little bit in this program, and we're going to be talking about it a lot more when we get to chapter 16, because chapter 16 is all about dissolving the ego. So this is a meditation that's going to help you to be able to realize non-self. So I'm going to introduce you to that today. So these are the only 4 types of meditation that the Buddha taught. So now what I've done on this slide is I've taken each one of those meditations and I'm showing you what are the unwholesome qualities that you're eliminating and what are the wholesome qualities that you're cultivating. So with breathing mindfulness meditation, you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection. The wholesome qualities that you're cultivating is the mindfulness or awareness of mind and the concentration. So that's what that meditation is really targeting in terms of the unwholesome qualities to eliminate and the wholesome qualities to cultivate. Loving kindness meditation is helping you eliminate anger, hatred, and ill will, and all the lesser versions, even the frustration, irritation, annoyance, even the slightest dislike towards another person. The only reason why you dislike people is because they're not meeting your expectations. You have certain cravings, certain wants, certain expectations, certain desires. The mind is craving permanence, wanting everybody to be a certain way. And when they meet those criteria that are in your mind, you like them. And when they don't meet your expectations, you dislike them. And that's where the mind's anger and frustration can arise. The mind is having dislike towards this person. Sometimes people think that the dislike is coming from the other person, when in reality it's coming from your own mind. So you need to get to the point where you eliminate your craving, desire, attachments, where you're wanting and expecting people to all be exactly the same way. But you also need to eliminate your anger and your bitterness and your hostility, because as long as you're putting that out, that's what's coming back to you. So we're going to be talking about that meditation. Then there's the meditation to eliminate sexual cravings. This is going to help you to eliminate the central desire, where the mind is longing, yearning for pleasure through the 6 sense spaces. And the way that you do this is you cultivate the unattractiveness of the body. I'll explain to you guys what that is when we get to this one. Then the meditation to realize non-self is helping you to eliminate and eradicate the self or the personal existence view, where the mind thinks that there's actually a self here. And it's going to help you to cultivate this impermanence, where you can eradicate the conceit, I am. So I'm going to explain to you when we get to that. So here's some more words from the Buddha on meditation, where he says, a pot without a stand is easy to tip over. A pot without a stand is easy to tip over. The pot is your mind. The stand is your meditation practice. A mind without a meditation practice is easy to become discontent. That's what he's saying, right? So if you haven't been meditating, of course you're stressed. Of course you have anxiety. Of course you experience sadness and frustration and things like this, because a pot without a stand is easy to tip over. A mind without a meditation practice is easy to become discontent. So when you're meditating, it's helping your stand become wider and wider and wider and wider, right? So that's what you're working towards, is to develop a really stable, consistent, steady, dedicated, and diligent meditation practice. Understanding it can take you 6 months, 12 months, or even 2 years to build up to that. Here's another teaching from the Buddha, where he's talking about kind of the goal and the importance of breathing mindfulness meditation and what it's used for. He says, monks, there is one thing that when developed and cultivated leads exclusively to liberation, to freedom from strong feelings, to elimination, to peace, to direct knowledge or experience, to enlightenment, to nibbana. What is that one thing? Mindfulness of breathing, breathing mindfulness meditation. This is that one thing that, when developed and cultivated, leads exclusively to freedom from strong feelings, to elimination, to peace, to direct knowledge or experience, to enlightenment, to nibbana. Okay? So here, the Buddha is helping you to be able to see that this meditation of breathing mindfulness meditation, it has one goal, one objective, to help you get to enlightenment. That's what the purpose of this meditation is. If someone's doing breathing mindfulness meditation, the goal of that is to get you to enlightenment. He's not saying you only need meditation in order to get to enlightenment, because otherwise he would have just taught meditation and that's it. But we have 45 volumes of books that are this thick that are helping you to understand all of his different teachings. And that's just the teachings that we have available to us. There are teachings beyond that that never actually made it into the collection of teachings that we have, right? So we know that he taught many other things besides meditation. But essentially what he's saying is this meditation, it has one goal: to get you to enlightenment. It's kind of like this car. It has one purpose: to provide you transportation. That's the goal of this car, is to provide transportation. But of course, you need more than just transportation to be able to lead your life and have a viable life, right? So that's what he's sharing here. So this is the purpose of this meditation. In terms of breathing mindfulness meditation, you guys are probably most familiar with this because we've been doing it each class, where you're focused on the breath, and anytime the mind moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go and bring your mind back to the breath. Here, what you're doing is training the mind to be aware when the mind moves off the breath. That's your mindfulness. Then when you're training your mind to let go, that's helping you to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. And now when you're focused on the breath, you're training the mind to be concentrated or focused. So the goal of this meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. You're always going to have thoughts. Even when you're enlightened in meditation, you're going to still have thoughts. But the difference is in the unenlightened state, you'll have a bombardment of thoughts. It's like thought. You're not bad at meditation. That's just what the unenlightened mind does. Or you'll have a thought, you'll follow it, you'll indulge in it, you'll play with it, you'll look at it, and then you'll realize 2 or 3 minutes down the road that, oh yeah, I'm meditating. Let me bring my mind back to the breath. So an enlightened being, they'll still have a thought during meditation, but they notice it right away and they cut it off and let it go and bring their mind back to the breath. And then there's this quietness and this stillness in between their thoughts, right? And then they'll have another thought. So you're not attempting to eliminate your thoughts here. You're looking to notice them sooner and sooner and cut them off and let them go easier and easier. So that in meditation, anything and everything that comes up in the mind, you're cutting that off and letting it go, whether it's wholesome or whether it's unwholesome. But in your day-to-day life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome thoughts, right? This is the same thing like a professional athlete does. They train in one way, but then their sport is completely different. So let's just say I was like a professional pole vaulter. I would go into the gym and do weight training, cardiovascular training, agility training, right? And then when I go do my sport, it looks completely different than what I'm doing in the gym. So the same thing's true here with your training, that you're cutting off everything and anything that comes up in meditation because you're training your mind to let go. But then in day-to-day life, if you have a wholesome thought, like maybe you'd like to take your mom or dad out to lunch or out to dinner, no need to cut that off. That's not going to produce unwholesome results. That's generosity. That's going to produce wholesome gamma for your wholesome results. So go forward with that, right? Maybe you decide to go forward and you give them a call and see if they're available to go out at some point for dinner or for lunch. But if you're thinking about punching your boss in the face, cut that one off, right? Because that's going to produce unwholesome results for you. So you're going to need to cut that off in day-to-day life. And slowly but surely, as you start to do that, eventually you won't have those thoughts anymore, right? So that's what you would like to do with this breathing mindfulness meditation. Okay, does anybody have any questions on breathing mindfulness meditation? Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, it looks like Alice might have a question here. Let me see what Alice is asking. So she's saying, sometimes I encounter difficulties to cut off completely a thought during meditation. What is exactly to cut off? What you're doing is you're redirecting the mind back to the breath, because with that thought that you're having, the mind wants to hold on to it. It doesn't feel comfortable to let it go. This is the whole reason why the mind experiences things like anger, sadness, frustration, and other things like this, because your mind's holding on. If you think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you might have ended a relationship with, that when you guys first broke up, you might have been sad or frustrated or lonely or bored or missing this person. That's because the mind was holding on. It didn't know how to let go. So what you're doing with this breathing mindfulness meditation is you're building an internal mechanism within your mind that is able to notice your thoughts and then easily cut them off and let them go. And the way that you're doing that is you're bringing the mind back to the breath. The way that you might think about this is, say there's like a post or a pillar that's deep down into the earth. And then there's these animals that are tied to the post or the pillar, and they have a rope around their neck, and then they're tied to the post and pillar. And let's just say that they're pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling. Maybe the alligator is trying to get back to the river, and the monkey's trying to get to the jungle, and the birds trying to get to the sky. Well, when they get to the end of that rope, they're going to get yanked back to the post, right? Well, if they do this enough and they keep pulling and pulling and pulling, eventually they're going to sit down and they're going to be calm and steady and stable. And they're just going to stay next to that post and pillar because they know they can't pull and they can't get back to the river, or to the jungle, or to the sky. Right? So your mind's the same way. Every time it pulls and wants to take you off the breath, you yank it back and you bring it back to the breath, and it's going to pull some more and you yank it back, and it pulls some more and you yank it back. And when you get this practice where you're consistently doing this, where it keeps redirecting the mind back to the breath, eventually over a consistent long-term period, your mind won't pull anymore. It'll just stay steady, focused on the breath. And of course, you're going to have a thought, like I mentioned, but you're going to notice it sooner and sooner and cut it off and let it go easier and easier. So when you're noticing the mind pulling, just redirect the mind back to the breath. And this is going to help you in day-to-day life, because where you notice the anger and the frustration and these other discontent feelings arising, you'll be able to cut it off and let it go. But if you haven't been training this way, you won't actually be able to let it go. So that's why you'd like to have a consistent ongoing practice, because the mind with its craving is going to be holding on tightly, and you're training it to let go. So if 10, 15, 20 times during your meditation, you need to let go, let go, let go. This is actually very helpful for the mind. You would actually like to do that because that's going to help your mind in day-to-day life to be able to easily let go. You're building your mindfulness and your awareness of mind so you can see what your mind's doing in your day-to-day life, and then you can let it go and let it go. Okay? Okay, let me see if we have any other questions anywhere. I don't see any other questions throughout our platforms, so I'm going to move on to the next meditation, which is loving kindness meditation. This meditation is going to rewire your mind to be more loving and more kind, because when your cravings, desires, attachments are getting triggered, where your mind is craving permanence, you're either going to get pleasant feelings if you're getting what you want, or you're going to get painful feelings where your mind is not getting what it wants, like the anger, sadness, frustration, and others. Or you're going to get those neither painful nor pleasant feelings. And when that anger is arising, you're pushing people away, or you're pushing the situation away. You're being bitter, harsh, and hostile to people, or you might be putting your expectations on people, trying to control them or force them or pressure them to do things your way. This is the unskillfulness that the unenlightened mind has. So as long as you're pushing people away out of your life, as long as you're being bitter, harsh, and hostile to them, or putting expectations on them and trying to control them, you can't live with all beings harmoniously. So you would like to get to a point where you don't have this anger and hostility and resentment and bitterness, because as long as you're putting that out into the world, that's what's going to come back to you. So you would like to get to the point where your mind can have love and kindness towards all beings, where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. So there's a meditation that essentially rewires your mind to be more loving and more kind. And you're going to need more than just this meditation. You can't just meditate your way to love and kindness, but it's an important component to it, because as you meditate, it's like filling up your gas tank, and then you go out into the world and you're loving and kind through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And that's where the Eightfold Path comes in, that the Buddha is teaching you how to do that. So this loving kindness meditation, we start it the same way with the chanting. Then we go into some breathing mindfulness meditation for like 3 to 5 minutes. Then you get into the loving kindness meditation, where you're doing these affirmations. May I be peaceful. You do that on the out breath. May I be safe. Again, on the out breath. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. You always start with I. Then you're going to make about 6 or 8 rings. What I have here is just for a learning tool. It's just a visual aid. You're going to make 6 to 8 rings. And in those rings, you'd probably like the first or, like 1 or 2 rings after you've done I. You like kind of like 1 or 2 rings to be people that you already have loving kindness for. Maybe this is your parents or your life partner, your children. And you actually might even use their name in the meditation, right? May Barbara be peaceful, right? Or may Robert, or may my husband, may my wife, may my children, may my mom or dad, right? Or you might even do something to include all of those. And you go through all 4 of these statements. Then you do like a ring or 2 of people you're more neutral about. You don't exactly hate them, but you don't really love them either. Maybe like a coworker or a neighbor or somebody like this. So you bubble up that loving kindness and it kind of spills over into this group. Then you like to do like a ring or 2 of people that you do hate, that you have anger towards, that you're resentful towards. It might be people that are currently in your life, or it could be people that are long gone in the past. It might be people that you'll never even see again. It might be even people who are dead. But if you're holding on to anger in your mind, it's just causing you harm. Sometimes people hold on to a grudge, or they hold on to their resentment, thinking that they're getting back at the other person. But the only person that's getting harmed here is yourself, because you're holding on to this anger. It's like holding on to a hot coal and trying to burn somebody else. And sometimes people think that they're keeping this anger like tucked away in a corner somewhere, but it's coming out in other parts of your life too. And it's causing unskillful conduct, right? And if you put out bitterness and harshness and hostility, it's just going to keep coming back to you. So you would like to liberate the mind of this bitterness and harshness and hostility. So you'd like to include some people that you actually have anger and hatred towards, right? So this meditation, as you go through it, you're going to end up ending with all beings. You'd like to get to the point where you haven't left anybody out. That the last statement you do is, may all beings be peaceful, safe, well, and free of discontentedness. And then ultimately you can go back to the breathing mindfulness meditation and back to the chanting. It's kind of like a loving kindness sandwich, where in the middle you've got loving kindness, and on the outside edge of that, you've got your lettuce and tomato, which is the breathing mindfulness meditation. And then you've got the bread holding it all together, which is the chanting. Okay, so you'd like to do this one in the morning. If you're doing meditation in the morning, this is an excellent meditation to do in the morning, because you basically fill up your mind with loving kindness, and then you go out into your day-to-day life where you're being loving and kind through your intentions, speech, and actions. Now, that's not to say that you couldn't do loving kindness meditation in the afternoon, because you surely could. Like, say you get a call at 2 or 3 p.m. in the afternoon and you're noticing anger coming up. Hey, sit down and do some loving kindness meditation. But as a consistent practice, if you're doing loving kindness in the morning, it really kind of prepares your mind and fills up that gas tank to go out into the world and be loving and kind through your intentions, speech, and actions. Because that's where the real transformation is occurring. The meditation is important. Like I mentioned, that's filling up your gas tank. But the real transformation that is occurring is in your day-to-day life, through your intention, speech, and actions. And that's why you'd like to have as much loving kindness walking out the door in the morning as possible. So that's how you can use something like loving kindness meditation. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this particular meditation. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. So let's go to this next one. And I apologize for that. Typically what I do is kind of give you guys a heads up that I'm going to flip the slide here, and I've got a dead corpse on the next slide. Okay. And I'm just giving you a heads up because some people, they have challenges to be able to look at a dead corpse. Well, if that's where you are and you're uncomfortable looking at a dead corpse, that's because of the mind's central desire, because of the craving, desire, attachment. And ultimately, you would like to get rid of that. But you need to make the choice of when you're going to choose to do that. I'm going to flip the slide and you're going to see a dead corpse. And if you're not interested in seeing the dead corpse, you can just look away or close your eyes. But this this is ultimately something you're going to need to train your mind to get comfortable with. So if you would like to look at it, it would actually help you to train your mind to get rid of some of the central desire that it has. What this dead corpse is for is there's a meditation to help you eliminate sexual cravings. Okay? As long as you have sexual craving in your mind, you're not going to be able to get to permanent peace and permanent joy. Because when you're getting sex and you're experiencing that, you'll get pleasant feelings. You'll be happy and excited in the act of sex, and then afterwards, especially if you've orgasmed, right, you're going to have maybe multiple hours or days where you're feeling really great. You're having all these pleasant feelings. But then at some point, that's all going to fade away. And now you're going to end up in the painful feelings again, right? There's this agitation and frustration and irritation. So ultimately, to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to eliminate sexual cravings. But when or if you choose to do that is a choice for you to make. If you're young or if you're in a relationship with someone and you guys are having a sexual relationship, maybe you stick with that for a period of time. You can actually get to the second stage of enlightenment while still having a sexual relationship. And maybe you do all the other work on the path to enlightenment. But at some point, you and your partner are like, you know what? We've been there, done that enough times. We don't really need to do that much anymore. Maybe we start to kind of wane off on this, right? Sometimes we think that sex is so enjoyable, there's no way we're going to ever give it up. We might think we're going to be on our deathbed still having sex, but that's very rare that that actually occurs, right? At some point in our life, we're probably going to kind of fade away from sexual activity. If you're interested in choosing to do that at any particular time, you can use this meditation to help you with that. Or let's just say you're having a really high sexual craving and you'd like to bring it down some. Maybe you're still interested in having sex, but you just like to bring your craving down some so you don't experience so much agitation and frustration around sexual craving. This meditation is good for you. Maybe somebody has like 3, 4, 5, 6 different sexual partners and they'd like to bring it down to just one. Well, this is a meditation that can help you. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they did something called 32-part body meditation, where they envisioned and visualized the 32 parts of the body individually within one's own mind, because they didn't have photographs during the lifetime of the Buddha. Another thing that they used to do is they used to sit with corpses. They would sit there and look at the corpse, and they would see the maggots and the deterioration of the corpse. They would also get the smell and the odor of the corpse. And this kind of turned the mind away from being interested to have sex with the body. Because the reason why an individual is interested in having sex is because they're looking for those pleasant feelings. And they look at this other person that is attractive to them, and they want to now have sex with this person to be able to get those pleasant feelings. But what the mind's doing is it's seeing the outer shell. It's seeing the skin and the hair and the makeup and the jewelry and the clothing and the muscles and all these things. And that's where the mind's like, oh, wow, I really want that, right? And the mind wants that in order to get pleasure through your own 6 sense bases: the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the contact with the body, and then the mind itself. So if you can develop the unattractiveness of the body, that's what the Buddha calls it, where you view the body as being unattractive, you can knock down your sexual cravings. Now, by the time you do this, where you eliminate your sexual cravings, you'll still know, like, wow, that person's really beautiful, or wow, that person's really handsome. You'll know that, but your mind won't be longing, yearning, and craving to have sex with this individual, because your mind will have eliminated any kind of longing, yearning for sexual activity. Because as long as you're getting sex, you'll feel great, but when you're not getting it, you'll feel agitated and frustrated and annoyed. So this is a meditation that you can do, either the 32-part body meditation, if you learn that in any of the courses that I teach. If you can go around a dead corpse or see images of that, nowadays they have cadaver labs where doctors and nurses and massage therapists and people like this, you can pay a nominal fee and you can actually go view dead bodies. This is another way to do it. Or if you would like to be able to use a picture like this, you can go on the internet and you can search for pictures like this. They even have videos on YouTube of people doing autopsies and things like this. So you could actually watch those kinds of things and develop the unattractiveness of the body. So let me know if you guys have any questions here on this particular meditation. Okay, I don't see any questions here. So now the last one. This is called meditation to realize non-self. Remember, non-self is where you train the mind to be able to understand that this body nor this mind is who you are, where you're not clinging to the self-image or the self-identity. These are what the mind does when it has what's called personal existence view. It'll cling to the self-image, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, or it'll cling to the self-identity, wanting other people to relate to you in a certain way. And we talked about this at different times during the program, and we're going to revisit it when we get to chapter 16. So this meditation is to help you strip away the concept and the misperception and the confusion that this body is who you are or this mind is who you are. Because as soon as you cling to any of this, thinking that this is who you are, when it all changes, you will really struggle during that period of time and you'll have discontentedness. So you need to be able to train your mind to let go and not to be able to see this body or this mind as who you are. So there is a body, there is a mind, and it's come together for this existence, and we call that a person or a human being. But you need to train the mind to not cling to it, wanting it to be permanent. Because if you cling to this body, wanting it to be permanent, when you see a wrinkle or a mole or a pimple or something like this, or you get gray hair, you'll be all shaken up by that. Maybe you get a little extra fat and you start getting all shaken up by that. Or maybe if you cling to your self-identity, like I am American, or I am Canadian, or I am a Brit, or something like this. Well, if somebody's saying something favorable about that type of person, you'll get really happy. You have pleasant feelings. But if somebody says something disagreeable to you about your nationality or anything else that you're clinging to that is you think is your identity, now you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. So as long as you think that this body or this mind is who you are, you won't be able to get to permanent peace and permanent joy. So this meditation, along with other things that you're going to learn in chapter 16, will help you to strip away this false understanding, this misperception, this confusion that the mind has, thinking that this is who you are. So that you do it similar to the loving kindness meditation, where you start with some chanting, the breathing mindfulness meditation, and then when you get into this, you do these affirmations within your mind, where you say, I am not the body. And you repeat that multiple times on the out breath. I am not the body. I am not the body. And then you move to the next one. I am not the mind. Then you do that multiple times. Then you go to the next one. There is no self. Again, doing that multiple times. Then you get to the next one. I do not exist. Okay, so we're not denying that there isn't a human being in existence. There is a human being here, right? What we're saying here by I do not exist is you're trying to get rid of that I, right? Because what the unenlightened mind is going to do is it's going to say things like, I am hungry, right? Well, I am not hungry. That's not true reality because there is no I here. True reality is the body needs food, right? It's not that I am thirsty because there's no I here. In true reality, the body needs water. The body needs to be hydrated. That's what truly is happening. Or it's not I am angry because there's no I here. True reality is that the mind is experiencing anger. And the more you can see it this way, you can separate this I of who you think you are from these kinds of things. And now you can get to the point where you're peaceful and joyful. But if you keep having this I in your mind, the mind's going to be discontent in these situations. So this phrase of I do not exist isn't to say that there is no being here. It's just to get rid of this I out of your mind. And I'm going to give you more details on that when we get to chapter 16. Then you repeat, I am not the body, I am not the mind, there is no self, I do not exist. Okay, you repeat those multiple times, where you say the same phrase multiple times, and then you move to the next one and say that multiple times on the out breath. And slowly but surely, along with all the other things I'll teach you, that's going to help strip away this idea that any of these things are you and who you are as a person. And that's going to help your mind to become more peaceful and more joyful in all these unique situations. So do you guys have any questions on this meditation? I don't see any questions anywhere. Okay, so, here we go. It looks like maybe Adele has a question. Adela, sorry.
David, it's Joe this time.
Oh, wow, look at that.
I'm here.
Hey.
Body's here. So I was, on this last meditation, I don't know. This one, I don't know. I feel like I'm not there yet. On this, I don't know. Hoping maybe you could, I don't know, go over it a little more, or.
Yeah, this is a meditation that you normally do once you're getting into the jhanas. And I know you've learned that before, those preliminary phases that the mind goes through before you get to the first stage of enlightenment. There's enhanced qualities there that you'll experience because you're putting together the Eightfold Path really well. And now when you are getting into the jhanas, you start doing this meditation. So just like the loving kindness meditation, you'll be sitting with your eyes closed, and inside your mind, you'll be thinking, I am not the body. And you do that on the out breath. And then when you breathe in, I am not the body. And you do that repeatedly, right? For maybe like 4 or 5 times. Then you go to the next one. I am not the mind. I am not the mind. And I'm doing it a little bit faster than normal because I'm not going through the whole breath cycle, but you get the idea that you repeat each one of these phrases about 4 or 5 times. And what this does is it imprints in the mind that I am not this body, that this I doesn't exist, that that's just something that the mind's holding on to. And you're basically rewiring the mind to not see it that way any longer. And that's why it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. This is the kind of meditation that once you actually realize non-self, you won't actually use it any longer. So it's kind of like a temporary thing that you use for a period of time. But you would like to wait until your mind gets into the jhanas before you use this, because you need to develop your breathing mindfulness meditation and your loving kindness meditation first. And notice that you're putting together all the other factors of the Eightfold Path. You would have memorized the Eightfold Path in your mind because you wouldn't be able to practice it if you hadn't memorized it. So if you have memorized the Eightfold Path and you've been putting it together for a consistent long-term period, and you're starting to experience those qualities that are experienced in the jhanas, that's when you know to start doing this one.
David, this is Adela. I just have a really quick follow-up on these meditations. For somebody that's sort of more of a beginner in this journey, which meditation would you say to focus on first? And then once you kind of feel comfortable with that, which would you move on to, like steps as far as these meditations go?
Sure. What you normally do is you start with this breathing mindfulness meditation for about 4, 6, maybe as long as 8 weeks even, where you gradually build it up. And you're noticing that you're able to do, meditation regularly, that you're consistently doing it. In 4 to 8 weeks, you're not going to potentially be at the 2 to 3 for 30 minutes, but you're at least having a tendency to meditate. You're choosing to meditate. You know how to do it. You know the mechanics of the meditation. And you might only be meditating for 10, 15, 20 minutes, right, with this particular meditation. So you'd like to start with breathing mindfulness and build that up for at least 4 weeks, right? Some people do it for as short as 2 weeks or as long as 8 weeks. And then as you've built that up, that's going to be your foundation. Then you'd like to bring in this loving kindness meditation and start doing this one, and now build this one up. And these are the 2 primary forms of meditation, because if you remember back to the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires of craving, anger, and ignorance, the breathing mindfulness is targeting the craving. The loving kindness is targeting the anger. And then, of course, the ignorance is where you're cultivating wisdom. So these 2 meditations are the first 2 that you start with. These other 2 are specialized meditations that you only use in specialized situations. Not everyone's going to need this one to eliminate sexual cravings, because some people can actually do that without actually meditating. And then same thing with realizing non-self. While this meditation surely helps you, there's some people that can actually realize non-self without this meditation. So these are like two specialized meditations that not everyone needs, but everyone's definitely going to need these two. So if you focus on this first one for the first 4 to 6 weeks, then as you're doing that and you're noticing that you understand how to do it and you're regularly doing it, then you gradually bring in this loving kindness meditation. And that's what would be kind of like the way to kind of slowly phase these into your life.
Okay, and for the sexual cravings meditation, would you say that's more for someone who maybe is affected in some way by these desires, whether that's like agitation by not getting, not having sex or something, or like, or would you say it's more for like everyone? Because I don't know, I'm trying to, like, if you're in a partnership and you do have sex, however many times, but you walk away and you're fine, and it's just kind of like a thing that happens in your relationship, and it's not something that's affecting you in a way that's like making you angry or agitated when you're not having it. Would you say like this wouldn't apply in that situation? Like, I'm just trying to understand what a sexual craving would be defined as.
Yeah, so if you're having sex, there's sexual craving in the mind, right? If you had no sexual craving, you wouldn't be having sex at all. So if there's a sexual relationship, then there is a sexual craving there. There is the desire to have this type of contact in order to get to this pleasure. But the challenge is that sometimes you have sex and it wasn't quite so pleasurable, right? Sorry, Joe, I apologize for saying that, but of course that's going to happen. And maybe even Joe experiences that sometimes too, right? Where, you kind of been there, done that, you've done this enough times, right? Where you sometimes even are having sex and it's just not so pleasurable. Or maybe you guys go away on a business trip and now you're not spending time with each other. And now you're not having sexual contact at all. And the mind can be agitated and frustrated. So as long as there's any kind of sexual activity at all, that means there's a craving there. And you can't be permanently peaceful. You can't be permanently joyful, because when you take away that sexual contact for whatever reason, because the sexual contact is impermanent, when you take that away, now the mind's going to experience the painful feelings. So the meditation to eliminate sexual cravings could be used with someone if they have say they have a pornography addiction, maybe they're addicted to masturbation, maybe they're having sex with 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 different people. They have a really high sexual craving and they're trying to bring that down to just one person and kind of a more moderate sex life. But then also it can be used for, say, someone has a sex life and they're trying to completely get rid of it 100%. They could use this particular meditation. If you guys are in a sexual relationship and things are generally, okay, you don't need to go off and do this because you're not having urges to have sex with other people. You're only having sex with each other. But at some point, as you're starting to notice more and more peace come into the mind through all these other teachings of the Buddha, you're going to get to a point where you have like 2 or 3 or 4 months worth of complete peacefulness in your mind. And you're going to notice so much peace and so much joy coming in. This is where you're in the second stage of enlightenment. And maybe you're not having sex so frequently anymore. And now for 2, 3, 4 months, you're experiencing all kinds of peace and joy. But then maybe you guys decide to have sex. And yeah, you feel great while you're doing it, and maybe even for a couple of days afterwards. But then you're going to go through like 2 or 3 or 4 weeks of irritation and frustration. That peace that you were once experiencing for 2, 3, 4 months, it's gone because you ended up having this sex and your craving arised. And you'll be able to see how there's this general agitation and frustration in the mind. And you'll notice like, wow, I experienced those couple of hours or couple of days of pleasure, but now I'm right back to the painful feelings. That 2 months, 3 months, 4 months of peace and joy, and where the qualities of enlightenment were shining through, that was so much more enjoyable than this temporary experience that you had with sex. So you'll start seeing that there's actually something better in the world than sex, and it's called enlightenment. And when you start seeing those qualities shine through and you're more and more interested in that versus the sex, that's where you'll get to a point where you're ready to let go of sexual activity. And if you need this meditation, it's available for you to be able to do it, but not everybody actually needs it to be able to eliminate their sexual cravings. But in order to get to enlightenment, where there's permanent peace and permanent joy, you will need to eliminate sexual activity. But when or if you actually do that is a choice for you to make. For some people, they kind of make their way up to that second stage of enlightenment, and they kind of hang out there for many years, working on all the other aspects of the path. And then at some point, them and their partner aren't interested in continuing a sexual relationship, and they start appreciating the peace and the joy that they're experiencing more and more, and they start to phase out their sexual activity. So when or if someone does that, it's a choice for each person to make, but this is a meditation to help you if you need help during that period of time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere, so I'm going to share this just to kind of end things off. These are some words from the Buddha where he says, "Meditate, monks, do not be complacent, lest you regret it later. This is my instruction to you." Okay? This is the only thing you're ever going to get from the Buddha, where he's really encouraging you to be sure you meditate. Because if you're complacent in your meditation practice, you are going to regret it later. When you're having stress or anxiety or frustration or anger or sadness or any of these other discontent feelings, you're going to regret having not meditated. So this is the only thing you're ever going to get from the Buddha, where he's kind of like, be sure you go forward with this practice, because he's not trying to convince you to do anything. He's not trying to force you or control you to do anything. Here he's just encouraging you and helping you to realize, like, hey, if you don't meditate, you're going to actually regret it. And this is true. So stay consistent with your meditation practice. What I would share is never give up. Because giving up on your meditation practice is basically like resigning yourself to being angry and frustrated for the rest of your life, right? And that's no way to live life, right? So if you miss meditation today, okay, you missed meditation. Get right back into it, right? If you get 52, 53, 54, 55 meditations in a month, you're making your way to enlightenment, and gradually build that up. But don't ever give up on your meditation practice, because that just means you're going to resign yourself to experiencing anger and frustration for the rest of your life. And that's no way to live life. So I encourage you to never, ever, ever give up on your meditation practice. Okay, so I'm just going to end class by saying thank you to all of you guys for joining. Thank you for being interested in learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha. Next week, I'm going to be in chapter 12. Chapter 12 is titled, "Craving is the Problem. What is the solution?" This is where we're going to kind of make sure you understand what craving is and what the solution is to it. Because then in chapter 13, I'm going to teach you to do something called analyze the mind, where you can analyze the mind and actually specifically target some of these cravings, desires, attachments. It's almost like surgically removing them out of the mind. Because so far you've kind of learned some generalized training, but now we're going to start going in and talking about very specific things that you can do to maybe eliminate that specific craving to a piece of chocolate cake that you might have, or a certain craving that you have about maybe being around large crowds and you don't like being around large crowds and things like this. I'm going to teach you how to go in and surgically remove these cravings when we get to chapter 13. So chapter 12 is like a prep just to make sure you're understanding what's really going on in the mind before we actually move into chapter 13. And then we have a whole bunch of other teachings after that I'm going to gradually walk you guys through. So that's what we're going to be doing next week on Sunday. On Wednesday, I'm going to be doing meditation with students. Loving kindness meditation is the one that we're going to be doing. And then I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you guys have. So if you'd like to be able to learn loving kindness meditation and actually do it, you have Wednesday to be able to do that. And if you can't make the class live, then you've always got the recording. And remember, for some of you guys, that's Tuesday evening and Wednesday morning. And if you can't make those classes, then there's always the recording that you can learn from. So once again, thank you all for joining. Whatever you do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Be well and take care. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.